Hello, everybody. My name is Taylor Stanley. I am the Family Engagement Specialist for DC Public Schools. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Um, this has been a really unexpected time. I'm a parent, and when I became a parent, I had no clue that I would be a parent and there be a pandemic. And so we're facing some very unique challenges as parents and caregivers, particularly for students and children who need additional support in the realm of education. So I'm really happy that you're with us here tonight for preparing for in-person learning for students with an IEP, which is an individualized education program. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, I wanted to highlight a few upcoming workshops. On November 5th, we have Navigating Aspen Parent Portal for school year 2021. The parent portal is what you use to check grades, and there'll be different features depending on what age group or grade band your child is in. So we encourage you to join us for that. And then also, for families with children with sections with 504 plans, we have on November 12th, we have a parent's guide to section 504 supports for students with disabilities. And so we encourage you again to join us for that one if your child has a 504. And then I'm really excited because I'm a mother of a 2-year-old, almost a 2-year-old. And so our ECE team, our early childhood education team, is starting a new workshop series called Ready for Pre-K, which is ideal for 2-year-olds. And so this first topic on November 18th, which is a Wednesday, is all about social emotional learning. And so if you have a parent, if you have a 2-year-old, or maybe you have a child that's just around the age of 2, this is a great workshop series to hop on to get ready for pre-K and also figuring out what we can do to support our children who aren't being supported by DCPS right now to prepare for school. And then also on November 19th, we have Metas de Desarrollo para Niños de 3 a 5 años. And this is our milestones for 3 to 5-year-olds. And this is in Spanish. I am not leading that conversation. My Spanish is not that great. But we do have folks who will be walking our families through that. So if you're interested in joining any of these workshops, please sign up at bit.ly/DCPS Parent U RSVP. We'd love to have you. We love being able to bring you content every week. And so please join us for anything that feels relevant to your life and how you can support your child's education. One of the things that's great about Microsoft Teams Live is that we are able to provide subtitles. So let me slow down. If you need subtitles or if you'd like to use them, I like subtitles. Look for the gear icon in the bottom right corner of the video player. Then select captions/subtitles, and then you can choose a language from the list of available options. And so we are trying to make our workshops more accessible, and so the captions feature allows us to do that. For Microsoft Teams, we want to hear from you, so we've enabled the Q&A feature. And so we're encouraging you to use these to, we're encouraging you to use the Q&A feature to ask questions, share insights you might have. I know that, with families with children in special education programs, finding community is really important. I encourage you to, if you have any tips or tricks to share with families, to do so. And then also feel free to upvote using the thumbs up any questions and comments that you might that you would also like the answer to or that you agree with, using the thumbs up button. And it's a great way that we're able to kind of see what some of the more popular questions are. If we can't post everybody's question, we may not be able to post everybody's question, but take a look at those and see if there are any questions that relate to your questions. Also, because of the sensitive nature of some of your questions, feel free to let us know if you'd like one of our amazing experts to respond to you privately, as opposed to publishing your question publicly and answering it in that space. This is a community space, and I am passionate about my child, right? I also know that we've got to assume best intentions of other people. We go hard on ideas, not on people, and then also accept non-closure. Kerri is an absolute phenom and an amazing expert. We may not have every single question for you available, every single answer to every single question you have available tonight. And so we, as a parent, you hate to hear that, but I want to be upfront and honest with you about that, so that, you can come prepared. So one of the things that, and Kerri will go over this, but we'll have an overview of Term 2 learning models, a commitment to health and safety, instruction and related services, and then we'll have the open Q&A and next steps. Keep in mind, continue to ask questions all through the workshop, but we won't get to answering them in the conversation until the end of the workshop. So without further ado, I'm really excited to have Chancellor Louis Ferebee here to give you all a welcome and to let you know a little bit about what he's thinking about.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you, Taylor, for the wonderful introduction. And also as a parent, I know that we're all looking for answers during this time, and hopefully you'll leave tonight's session feeling more informed and confident that you can support your child at home during this pivotal time. We have a phenomenal presenter this evening. I'm proud to present to you our speaker for this evening, which is Kerri Larkin. Kerri Larkin serves as our Deputy Chief of Specialized Instruction and has been a mainstay for DCPS for an extremely long time. And we're pleased that she will be presenting tonight to share more information on how we can best support your families. Also, just want to thank all of our teachers and our students and families and communities for being strong partners. We've been able to maintain a relatively high engagement rate with 92% of our students logging in and participating in our remote learning activities over the course of Term 1 for the 2021 school year, which I believe says a lot about what we've been able to accomplish in the professional development for our teachers over the summer. But the work, the creativity that they are maintaining in our virtual classrooms. And here on this slide is a great representation of the way in which we're thinking outside of the box. And so this is a gardening photo from one of our schools where we maintain those types of activities. You can also see here an example of tech distribution that took place at some of our campuses to ensure that all of our students have a device for learning and they have the connectivity to learn at home. So again, thank you to all for the great work in getting us to where we are. And as we think about where we go forward, I do want to remind the community that as we think about our professional development experience this summer and the planning for this school year, DCPS grounded on the feedback from our survey data and other perception data that we collected from staff and families. And from that, we anchored on 3 guiding principles, and that is to continue to prioritize robust health and safety protocols for staff and students, ensuring that we're maximizing learning, whether that's at home or whether that's in school, and then continue to operate from a very rich lens of equity, recognizing that the needs of our students and our school community will vary, and we should adjust our resources and supports accordingly. As we think about our commitment to equity, we made the decision to reopen our elementary schools first for our students experiencing homelessness, our students that are English language learners, students receiving special education services, and our students identified as at risk as our priority groups. We believe that this is the most equitable way to begin to allow for more students, especially those furthest from opportunity, their lifelong supports that they need, but also the ability to start with in-person experiences for those students who may need the most, especially the known opportunity gaps that DCPS recognizes even prior to COVID-19. So what will the reopening and return to in-person learning look like for our students and families? So for term one, we are primarily operating our student support centers. Our student support centers are small cohorts of students that are in schools for either social emotional development activities, or they're providing our young people with the ability to complete their career and technical education courses, or complete the credentials needed to complete their career pathways. And then we're also providing academic supports at small numbers. For term two, which begins in November, we are planning to bring back our students in grades pre-K through 12, pre-K through 5. Our students in grades pre-K through 12 will have the ability to continue with remote learning if families choose that opportunity, but only in-person experience will be offered to those students in grades pre-K through 5. And again, they're prioritizing our youngest learners. For term three, we are planning to bring in for in-person experiences and programming our students in our secondary schools, which is grades 6 through 12. Again, regardless of the term 1, 2, or 3, or for the foreseeable future in term 4, families will always have the option to choose to continue with remote learning. And only families who are offered a seat and select their seat based on the randomized selection process for the priority groups that I referenced previously, can those families accept the seat? And then if they choose it, we ask that they complete the immunization verification process for their young person. And then also we request that they complete a daily screening before they come into the building for any in-person experiences. As we also think about term two, I just also want just to highlight some information as we think about our elementary grade students in grades pre-K through 5. We want everyone to know that we're committed to providing a safe and supportive learning space for our youngest learners. That includes serving students with IEPs. We know students with IEPs will benefit from the individualized instruction and the related services associated with their IEPs. We also believe that this is a way for us to maximize the learning time for our students, especially those furthest from opportunity. So you have the recap for term 1, 2, 3, and 4, and what our thinking is. Also a reminder to families, again, those students in grades pre-K through 5 will have 2 options for in-person programming. That is our in-person learning classrooms that will be taught by a certified teacher, which includes our self-contained classrooms, and then our student care classrooms. These are classrooms that will be supervised by an adult, where students will be in a school building and have access to their peers and social development and meals on campus, and also recess and playtime. However, they will continue their instruction virtually with their virtual teacher. As mentioned earlier, those students that are in grades 6 through 12 will be learning remotely, and then all other students who choose to learn remotely in grades pre-K through 5 will also remain in their current virtual posture. As we approach the days ahead, DCPS will continue to lean into health and safety protocols, ensuring that all of our health and safety commitments are honored. Tonight, we will provide an overview of all of our term 2 models, which you've heard me speak to. And then I will also highlight some of our health and safety commitments, and then we'll dig into instruction and related service, and then provide some time for question and answers. So switching gears to our health and safety protocols, we want to highlight what they are, excuse me, which includes our face coverings that will be required for all students, ensuring that there's reduced class sizes for cohorting, sanitizing and cleaning of our buildings. We have rapid testing for any student or staff member that would be symptomatic. And then we also have medical health professionals that will be assigned to every campus as well. And then we're investing in over $24 million in HVAC enhancements to ensure that all of our classrooms have the appropriate filtration and ventilation in the space to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19. So hopefully, again, here tonight, there's a clear understanding what our academic plans are for term 2 with students in grades pre-K through 5 with our in-person learning and care classrooms. And then you also hear tonight our health and safety commitments. And it's important to note that schools have already started their building readiness walkthroughs where community members and representatives from the school can come to the school and visually see evidence of the health and safety commitments that I've highlighted tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Burney, who leads our comms and engagement team, and she'll share a little bit more about what to expect. And again, we'll then dive into our discussion on instruction and related services. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you so much for being here. It's I know that it's really comforting for families to see you, to be able to engage, and have it come straight from you. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We're gonna get the ball rolling. I am not Miss Burney. I wish I was, because she's so amazing. But we're gonna pass it on to Kerri Larkin, who is also amazing. Kerri is the Deputy Chief of Specialized Instruction in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And if there is ever a person to ask questions of related to this topic, it is this amazing human being. So I'm going to pass it on to Kerri, and she is going to give you the rundown of what to expect for your child, so that we can provide you with information so that you feel empowered to make the decision that works best and fits best with your family. So Kerri, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you, Chancellor, and welcome families. Thank you so much for taking dinner time to be with us. Our goal this evening is to provide for you a vision of what instruction and related services can look like when we return to schools. And we're happy to take questions and concerns and hopes that you have for what that experience can be with your child who has an IEP. I'm going to talk a little bit about first our commitment to health and safety. Our goal has always been and will continue to be the health and safety of our staff and our students and our school leaders. We have nothing without them. So I'm going to ask Taylor to proceed to the next slide, where we can talk a little bit in more detail about the overview the Chancellor provided of our health and safety commitments to students and staff. So when we think about our return to school, we're thinking about limiting the size of the group in any classroom, and that's in the grade level classrooms as well as the self-contained and care classrooms. Students and staff will have to learn new safety routines that include wearing masks, hand sanitizing, working differently with the materials that we associate with learning and related services, and maintaining a really clean facility with different procedures that we would need then in non-COVID time. We are reducing transitions between classes. Students will come into their classroom and largely stay in that classroom for the course of the school day unless they are doing planned trips to the restroom or playing outside. The classroom space is going to be reorganized to ensure social distance, and I will show you some pictures of that so you can start to picture in your mind what your child's experience could be, with adjusted arrival and dismissal time so that we are staggering the experience of kids entering and exiting the building. As the Chancellor described, we're making adjustments to screening and reporting, where children will have their temperature taken upon entering the building. Their meals will be served in the classroom, and professional development time will be set aside for the staff who return to school buildings to learn these new routines and procedures. We know it's one thing to put new routines and procedures and requirements on paper, and quite another for people to learn them, and especially children who have been away from us for a long time. So we will train our staff accordingly and help them support children with learning these new routines. The pictures that you're seeing on these slides are just two examples of what a socially distant classroom can look like. You see sort of a different iteration of a small group work around a carpet that allows children to look at their peers, see their peers, have a conversation about content and learning while remaining socially distant at their own desks. I want to draw your attention to the markings, the blue markings around the desk that help delineate space where children remain while they're doing small group work. And this is one way that students will remain engaged with one another while staying safe and socially distant. And in the image to the right is just a different kind of classroom space. And that would be set up more for a whole group instruction. You see the bookshelves separating the desks. The desks are facing forward for that part of the learning. And this is a way that we can have children in the classroom, working with their teacher, learning together and staying safe. They're two different images of two different kinds of classrooms. Any one is possible in our pre-K to grade 5 spaces. And I hope that that provides you a picture of what your child might encounter if you decide that you are ready to send your children back to school with us in term 2. The next slide contains a picture of the special education classroom that will be dedicated space in each building. We will talk more about related services and the provision of services in this presentation. I know there are many questions that families have, and I think and hope that I will be able to answer them. But in every school, there will be a classroom that is designated for special education services for children whose services are delivered in a pull-out from the classroom session. And what you're seeing here is a mock-up of 2 different work areas that include a desk for a related service provider. It has a plexiglass shield to create space between the provider and the student, and space for up to 2 students to remain socially distant on either side of the table and still work together with one provider. In this room, we also have a work area for teachers because we know that some teachers will be serving students who are returning to us in person, and those same teachers will still be serving students who are at home. And these teachers will have a designated work area in the building where they can safely work and provide virtual instruction for students who remain at home. You can see that the classroom is divided up by a movable wall so that there's a degree of privacy for providers and students and workspace, and then a degree of flexibility as well, depending on the amount of space needed for the provision of instruction or services. Work that continues as we work with our partners to bring students back is building readiness. Some of you may have heard that there are building walkthroughs this week. Our council is involved, and we are helping people imagine what it's going to be to return to school buildings. I mean, we know that there are a lot of questions and concerns. All school buildings that are preparing to welcome staff and students are going through a building readiness checklist to ensure that the space is safe for adults and children. So this includes personal protective equipment, or PPE, and hygiene supplies for both students and staff, enhanced cleaning supplies and procedures to ensure that we are maintaining a safe and healthy environment, socially distanced space and demarcation in the hallways and in the classrooms to help people envision what it means to remain socially distant. Water access has shifted in the age of COVID. As you can imagine, water fountains have been turned off. Water bottles will be available for students and staff. There are HVAC enhancements in each of the buildings, and the plumbing has been updated to ensure that we are ready to welcome staff and students. There have been entire parent universities and community engagement sessions that focus entirely on the details and nuances of building readiness and the nuanced and sophisticated responses that the ops team is able to provide on details of HVAC systems and cleaning procedures. For today's session, we really want to get to instruction and related services. So I'm going to move on from building readiness and safety protocols and talk a little bit more about instruction and related service and what your child could expect from an in-person experience when we're able to bring students and staff back to the building. The Chancellor began to explain that there are 3 different options for families of children with IEPs. The first is that we are targeting opening self-contained programs and River Terrace to ensure that our students who need us the most have the most access to us. I do want to reiterate, families may always choose to remain virtual. In this model, the families who choose to return to school or remain virtual, the students will stay with their teacher. So the classroom teacher will be the classroom teacher whether the children are in the brick and mortar school or if they are remaining virtual. And the in-person instruction will be supported by at least one paraprofessional. We will do this by using what's called a combined instructional model, where leveraging technology, the teacher will be able to teach to the in-person classroom and do small groups and live instruction with the children who are at home. We can leverage smart boards, we can leverage Microsoft Teams. We have at least one, if not multiple, paraprofessionals available to support this instructional delivery model. It is new and innovative. It is something that teachers and paras and families will need to learn in order to execute properly. We're excited about that model because it allows us to provide a continuity of staff for the students in self-contained programs. And we know that that is something that's very important to all families and something we're most able to provide to these families. And so I'm proud of the work we've put into ensuring that this is an instructional delivery model that we can provide. The other option for parents of children with IEPs is in-person learning with the grade level classes pre-K to grade 5. So in this model, students with IEPs have there's 1 or 2 instructional possibilities. One is that the class would be taught in part by a general education teacher who is in person and in part by a special education teacher who is in person. In that case, the child would have 2 different in-person teachers to deliver inclusive instruction. There is the possibility that students would return to school and they would have 1 teacher who is there in person and 1 teacher who is remaining virtual. And in that case, there would be a live instruction, small group, whole group, and individual live instruction, and that students with IEPs would then access their virtual teacher for different periods during the day using headphones and the computer that will be part of their in-school experience. So all of these models are staff dependent, and whether your child has 2 in-person teachers or 1 in-person and 1 virtual teacher is really dependent on staff availability. In this case, when the child is a part of the in-person learning grade level class, your child would stay with that small cohort of students throughout the course of the school day. So with both self-contained and in-person learning classrooms, the children are remaining with that group of students throughout the course of the day, with minimal exchange with other adults and minimal movement in the building, with the exception of planned bathroom breaks and then the opportunity to participate in recess. So in the care classroom, we will have supervision for students with IEPs, but instruction and services remain virtual. So the care classrooms are available to students whose parents are ready and able to send them back to school. And we have staff to staff the model, and the technology is in place for instruction and services to remain entirely virtual. So care is a supervised experience for children who can come to school and see some of their classmates. They get to go outside for recess and play in a safe and socially distant supervised way. They would receive breakfast and lunch in the care classroom. So they're participating in some of the routines and procedures that mirror our normal life before COVID, but their services, their support, their instruction, their FAPE remains entirely virtual in the care model. So those are the 3 options available to students with IEPs as we anticipate coming back to school. I'm going to talk a little bit about related services and what families can expect when they are ready to come back to us. So the in-person related services that DCPS would like to be able to offer to students who return to us in person are occupational therapy, physical therapy, and orientation and mobility. We use the acronyms OT, PT, and O&M. These are the services that are most challenging to deliver in a virtual space. They require a high degree of specialization from the provider, and it's not something that in collaboration with parents or in consultation with parents that is very effective to deliver. This is what we've heard most from our parents and our providers and what we would like to make available first. We do plan to modify schedules of providers and instruction so that we can limit as much as possible the interactions between various adults and cohorts of students. So let me tell you how we're thinking about and planning to do that, so you have an idea of what your child would experience upon returning to school. So if your child returns to school in an in-person learning grade level classroom, your child will be pulled from that classroom to receive their OT, PT, or orientation and mobility away from the other children in that cohort. This is where we would leverage the classroom diagram that you saw earlier in the slide presentation, where there's a designated space for service delivery between providers and students. It is possible from the in-learning space that only one child would be pulled at a time, but it is also possible that if there are one or two children from that same cohort, that they could be pulled to work on a similar skill together. What we would not do is mix cohorts of children to pull them out for related services. We would only be pulling one child from a classroom or more than one child from the same classroom. We would not mix cohorts of students, nor are we pushing into the in-person learning classrooms. And when I say push in, I mean the provider would enter into the classroom space and provide services within the classroom space. In-person learning means the child is being pulled out for that related service. It's a little bit different for the children in self-contained classes. The children in self-contained classrooms tend to have all of the related services that DCPS is able to offer, and multiple students within the classroom would be in need of that related service or services. So in that case, the provider would push into the self-contained classroom in order to provide services to multiple children in that space. It is possible that the related service provider could co-teach or lead a small group to work on a skill that all of the children in the classroom are working on. It's also possible that an individual child would work on an individual skill with the related service provider within that classroom space. So providers will enter into the self-contained classrooms. They may co-teach or work with small groups or provide one-on-one service delivery that is dependent entirely on the goal, on the child, and on what the other children in that classroom are working on. The self-contained classes are returning at half capacity so that we can ensure that all of the adults needed to provide instruction and services are able to be there to support both the children in class and the children at home without ever going over a health and safety cap. At the River Terrace Education Campus, the service delivery is likely to look more like the self-contained programs where providers are pushing into classroom spaces, co-teaching, working with individuals, or working with small groups. But because River Terrace is a campus of entirely students with IEPs, there is more flexibility there and more space there to move children out safely or to push in safely. Those will be more individualized decisions based on the students and the providers. As I said in the previous slide, students with IEPs may return to us in the care model, but their related services would remain entirely virtual. They would not be working with the in-person related service providers. And as the Chancellor mentioned, and we will continue to reiterate, the decision to come back to school is a decision that families can make that are right for you and your child, and your instructional and related services can and will remain entirely virtual. And that's the choice that you are able to make for your child. I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about the provision of related services and the in-person related services that we are considering, which again are occupational therapy, physical therapy, and orientation and mobility. In the case of OT, PT, and O&M, we need to work more closely with students than 6 feet can often than the 6 feet requirement. And so the related service providers will have enhanced PPE or personal protective equipment in order to ensure that both students and staff can safely participate in the related service delivery. So enhanced PPE for related service providers includes things like face shields, gowns, gloves, and multiple changings throughout the course of the day, so that providers are constantly changing the enhanced PPE that is available to them with every interaction they have with a student. Enhanced PPE and plexiglass are available for when providers are working outside of the classroom space with students to ensure safety and to ensure that everyone is able to engage while adhering to the COVID requirements. And then, of course, with virtual, there's no PPE required because we are not in close proximity to one another. I think the primary takeaway from this slide is that all staff and students who return to buildings will have PPE available to them. Related service providers have enhanced PPE. They have more, and that means they have more changes available to them and more personal protective equipment to ensure that we are reducing as much as possible any safety risk. Okay, we are moving into the period of the conversation where we're going to lift parent questions. I know you have many questions. I know that you have hopes and fears and concerns, and we want to address them. There are so many questions and concerns right now, and we want you to leave here satisfied with the information that we're able to provide. And we are able to provide the most information around instruction and related service delivery. We know those are not the only questions that you have, but those are the questions that we are most able to respond to this evening, so that you can leave with a clearer picture of what your child would experience if you are willing and able to send your child back to us.
Thanks, Kerri. You've been really amazing in talking to us. For a couple of questions that we have teed up, we have an excuse. I am a parent again, so you will be hearing my child in the background. For the occupational physical therapy, there will be in person, correct? You're on mute, Kerri.
Okay, am I not on mute now? Okay.
You're not on mute anymore. No, you're fine.
So occupational and physical therapy are two of the related services that we want to be able to provide in person. That is dependent on a couple of factors. The first thing, like all plans, this is dependent on staff availability. And we are working very closely with our union partners to create conditions that would allow people to feel safe to come back to provide instruction and services. So occupational and physical therapy are two services that we would like to provide as long as we have the staff who are able to provide them. And we would provide them to students who already have those services on their IEPs, whether they are in self-contained spaces or in-person learning grade level spaces. Students with IEPs in the care model would remain virtual.
Great, thanks, Kerri. And this is on a similar note. I know that you've touched on this, but this is something that has been asked. Will in-person grades receive an aid if no specialists in person?
If the question is if my child has a dedicated aide during traditional brick and mortar school, will my child have a dedicated aide in in-person learning? And the answer is yes. If your child has a dedicated aide on their IEP and they're returning to the self-contained class and the care model, then the self-contained class and the in-person learning, then we will have the dedicated aides available to them.
Okay, great. And then another question that I have, families who don't feel comfortable sending their children back do not have to, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. And that there are certain services that will remain virtual.
All services will remain virtual to families who remain virtual. Families who choose to remain virtual will not lose any services or instruction.
Okay. And I'm scrolling through some of our questions. My child is in her Sesame Street phase, so that's what you're hearing. And again, there are certain things that will be provided on a school level, correct? So what, like the PPE?
That's correct.
Okay. And then have any emails about placement been sent out?
That's a great question. So the first round of notifications went out for in-person learning. So some families on this call may have received an invitation to return to in-person learning. The self-contained lottery emails have not yet gone out. You did not miss an email. So we are hoping and planning to send those out as soon as we are able.
Okay. And speech therapy will be done virtually, correct?
Yes, all speech therapy is going to remain virtual, whether children are in person or not.
Let me see. Scrolling through some good questions. And so right now for families of middle and high school students, they should expect to remain virtual for term 2.
That is correct. So secondary students grades 6 through 12 will remain virtual during term 2. And our goal and our plan is to be able to return students at those grade levels in the second semester of the school year, or term 3 and 4.
Okay. For families with for families who have not yet had their IEP meetings, what do you recommend that they do right now?
That's a great question. So not unlike speech and language therapy, IEP meetings will remain virtual for this school year. We intend to hold all of the IEP meetings through Microsoft Teams in a virtual space, which means there should be no disruption to your child's annual IEP meeting. So if your annual meeting is scheduled for this fall, it should be held this fall. And any questions or concerns that you have about that, you would direct to the case manager on the school level, because they are aware of when all of those meetings can and should be taking place, but they will be virtual.
Okay, and that's really helpful. And I know that this is a recap from the workshop that we did earlier this term, but for families who choose to remain virtual, there is an additional reference that accompanies their IEP, correct?
I don't know. I think you may be referring to the Individualized Distance Learning Plan.
Yes.
The IDLP. So every student with an IEP should have an Individualized Distance Learning Plan. The IEP is still the legal record. That is what your child needs, whether we are in a pandemic or not. The pandemic doesn't change what your child needs or who your child is. It just changes the way we can deliver it. So the Individualized Distance Learning Plan is a translation of how the IEP will be implemented during a virtual space. And we do not anticipate updating IDLPs for families that return to the brick and mortar space. We wanted every family to have the opportunity to have a conversation with teachers, with case managers, with related service providers about what is a reasonable expectation in a virtual environment. That is not something we did in the spring, and wanted to provide that level of transparency and commitment in the fall. But we know, and all of you know, with children at home, that the safety conditions are changing and plans are changing, and we don't want to prioritize returning to the individualized distance learning plan, we want to prioritize being prepared for the shifts, being ready for the shifts for staff and students to practice and participate in the shifts. And so we will focus on professional development around training for health and safety, as well as training for new instructional technologies, and then social emotional learning and recovery, rebuilding relationships, learning how to navigate relationships in a socially distant PPE kind of space. Lots of routines and procedures will be familiar and comforting in a classroom, and a lot of it will be new for everybody. And we know that that will take time, and we are committed to supporting staff and teaching children how to participate in these new routines and procedures that will keep them safe.
Thanks, Kerri. You may not, this is one of those questions that you may not have the answer to, and that is okay. And let me know if you don't have the answer to this one. Sure. If a family of a child with an IEP declines an in-person slot for term 2, will they have an opportunity to then be priority for in-person in term 3? Or I know it's a little iffy right now.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. And I don't know the clear answer to that. And I don't know that there is a clear answer yet. My understanding is that we are running this lottery for term 2, and that those are seats that parents can accept or decline for term 2 and the remainder of the school year. But we recognize these are unprecedented times and they are changing, and we need to revisit our thinking frequently as well. So to the best of my understanding at this time, if you were to decline a seat in term 2, that would be considered declining the seat.
Okay. Thanks, Kerri. And this is a related question that, again, you may not have the answer to, but I think that there is a more nuanced answer. Is there an appeals process if our child was not selected to return for in-person learning?
That is a great question. I know that the selection process is indeed a process, and that families are offered seats and families have a little time to think about whether or not they want to accept that seat. And if a family declines that seat, it makes a seat available to another student. So there are wait lists. I know that families are anxiously awaiting word on the wait list. We really are working to provide students and families who are ready to come back the opportunity to come back in some form. So I know that's not really a clear and direct answer about an appeals process. I don't believe at this point there is an appeals process. There is a lottery. There is a period of time in which parents accept or decline that seat. And in declining the seat, it creates room for another student to come off the wait list.
Thanks, Kerri. I know that, this is one of those situations where, like, if we could forecast, we would have all the answers. And, I want to be candid with you all that there are some questions that you all are asking we may not have the answer to tonight.
Some of them, they're excellent questions that arise because now families and staff are thinking so much more about what this experience could be, and that's allowing us to think through next steps and more options. So if we don't have an answer now, we will work to find an answer.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Kerri. I know that, as a parent, I know that I want to be able to have as much information as possible so that I can make the best decision for my child and my family. And so having you here to answer questions and, even be, candid is very helpful. I think you touched on this a little bit because we were talking about IEP evaluations. And so as school buildings open up, will there be a shift to in-person evaluations, or will they stay virtual?
The norm is virtual assessment. We did a great deal of work over the spring and the summer to work with the administrators of the testing protocols to learn about virtual assessment, to practice administering virtual assessments, and to ensure that assessments would continue even if we had to remain in an entirely virtual space. So virtual assessments can and should be considered the norm. As we think about going back into school buildings, we thought about prioritizing children based on what they need from the school system. And you heard the Chancellor talk about that. We want to prioritize children who are experiencing homelessness, children with IEPs or language learning needs, children who are deemed at risk. So those are the children we're bringing back first. When we think about in-person assessments, and we think about students coming back to buildings, we are not necessarily thinking that every child who returns to a building will therefore have an in-person assessment. We are starting to think that the children who most benefit from in-person assessment, and that would be another way of saying the children who we know struggle the most with engaging in a virtual assessment, would be our youngest children, our 3- and 4-year-old children. Who really struggle to engage in a virtual space and sustain their attention. And I'm sure those of you at parents at home have seen that. Children who reach a clinical level of severe and profound need. So students who bring great strength and personality and diversity to us, but children who on their IEPs would be considered clinically severe and profound, and therefore have the most challenges in engaging with an adult through an online module. So we're thinking through our students who we are serving the least through the online instructional and related service delivery and the assessments to prioritize their in-person experiences.
Okay. And for the IDLP, should all of the students' goals be on the IDLP, or is it because it's not actually a replacement of the IEP that it speaks mostly to parts of the IEP that need virtual modification?
That's a great question. For the most part, it would be the goals that will be delivered virtually and require a virtual shift. I'm having a hard time coming up with a really salient example of a goal that would not be impacted by a shift to virtual instruction or related service delivery. So for the most part, one would expect to see most of the goals on the individualized distance learning plan so that we know how it will be addressed in distance learning. But knowing that we have well over 8,000 IEPs that we're talking about, I'm sure it is possible that not every single goal is on every single IDLP, particularly if there's a reason that that goal would not be directly impacted by a virtual implementation. Okay.
Kerri, we have about 5 minutes left, and I've got to do some closing out work for our families to, let them know about additional information. Is there one piece of information, one point that you really want to drive home to families tonight?
That we love and miss your children very much, and we love and miss their teachers. And we are really working very hard with all of these groups to ensure that buildings are safe and people are safe, and that instruction-related service delivery can continue in person in some way. We are committed to your children. We are working tirelessly to ensure that these conditions are safe and loving when they are ready to return and you are ready to send them. And I know that we didn't answer all of your questions and concerns tonight, and I would encourage you to look for other opportunities to engage in the community. There will be a mayor's teleconference next week, and I and other people from DCPS will be on that panel. So there will be other opportunities to engage with us, and we really look forward to seeing and hearing from you. Thank you for the opportunity to say that, Taylor, and thank you to you and to the many people in the background, including Sandy and Regina from my team, who are answering questions and who are giving their time and expertise to you so that you can leave here with more information than you had when you came.
Thank you so much, Kerri. I think with so much feeling like it's in the air, providing families with the information that we do have, is, as a parent, that's something that I know that I'm not a DCPS parent yet, but that's something that, that would make me feel more comfortable. So thank you for being that person to provide folks with answers to, at least most of their questions. And thank you to all of the experts who were answering questions in the Q&A. Yes, so to Kerri's point, for those of you who are considering sending your children back, be sure to get your immunization certifications in so that you can get your seat and have your child be in person. As Kerri mentioned, we do have the town hall coming up. And then also, we have more information on dcpsreopenstrong.com. Our comms team, communications team is constantly updating it. Please take a look. And you may find some of the answers that you're looking for there. I can't reiterate this enough. dcpsreopenstrong.com. You'll find information there. Another piece that I wanted to share is that Kerri and her team have developed a parent resource. And so let me post it in the Q&A. And so and we have it in multiple languages. And so it's a great resource to take a look at and see, the IEP process, more about the IDLP. I'm so terrible with acronyms, and it's our mission to get better at not doing them. But wanting to provide that resource for you all, it's in the Q&A section. Take a look. It's very long, and it's available in multiple languages. Again, I want to highlight the upcoming workshops that we have. Navigating Aspen Parent Portal for school year 2021. Yes, our elementary school families will be using Aspen in the near future. So please hop on. We'll share with you all the amazing features that Aspen has to offer for our elementary school families, our middle school families, and our high school families. And so for elementary school families, you don't necessarily have to stay for the whole thing unless you want to get a preview of what you have to look forward to as DCPS parents. And then again, for our families with children with Section 504 supports, we have a workshop coming up November 12th, all about that. So we'll be talking you through that. Well, not me, but our content experts. Then again, which I've made no secret that I'm excited for, the Ready for Pre-K emotional learning workshops. This workshop is for families with 2-year-olds. So if you have a kid in pre-K 3, your child might be a little bit too old, but if you're gearing up and getting ready to say, what do I need to do to get my child ready for pre-K 3? This is for you. And then also we have a workshop for our Spanish-speaking families of 3- and 5-year-olds. And actually, if you want the English version, we have that online on our YouTube page. And it's called Milestones for 3- to 5-year-olds. And so please feel free to sign up for all of these or one at bit.ly/DCPS Parent U RSVP. Again, I'm going to keep pushing this. DCPSreopenstrong.com. You'll find additional resources, more information about school reopening, and so that you all feel empowered to make the best decision possible for your family. We want to know how we did, whether or not this was worth your time. I know it's dinner time. And if you're like me, you had a child pulling on your leg during this workshop. And so we want to make sure that the workshops that we do are serving you. So please, if you have time, fill out the quick survey so that we know if we're hitting the mark. And also, we have an email address for you to send questions or ideas to. I saw someone ask a question about community for families with children in special education. Please reach out to us using the ParentU at k12.dc.gov. This workshop and other workshops are available at bit.ly/DCPS ParentU Rex. And so that'll take you to our YouTube playlist for this school year. And so you'll be able to see this recording and past recordings. This recording will not be up as soon as we get off. So I want to manage your expectations, but it will be on there for future reference. Again, it has been really hard to be a parent during a pandemic, on top of other things that we have to go through as caregivers on a daily basis. Nobody expected this to happen. And I know that it can be frustrating when we don't have all the answers. Again, I've said that as a parent, I want as many answers as possible so I can make the decision that I need to for my child. And so you all are doing great. You're doing what you can with the resources and information that you can, that you have. And so, you know, if that's all we have as parents, know that, you know, it's gonna be okay. And to give yourself grace, and, you know, eventually, again, we'll, as Kerri said, we'll all get to see each other again in person. We'll all get to hopefully hug each other, and really do what we need to do for our kids. So with that said, you all have a wonderful night. Hug your little ones for us. Tell them that their teachers and even central office staff, we miss them, and that we're working hard for them and for you. So Kerri, thank you again for answering questions that, you know, were not even in your purview, but for being that person to answer them. And thank you to your team. Thank you to my team, and parents, thank you to you. You have a wonderful night.